Hey everybody, welcome to No Breakaways, your source for all the Zwift racing tips and tricks. I'm back again with Jordan Shane. How's it going, Jordan?
Good, Rick.
And Jackie Godby. How are you?
Great, thank you so much.
Jackie, you always look freezing cold in your house.
That's because it is freezing cold. I believe the temperature outside today in Chicago is -10. And yeah, heater's working full time, and I've still got the hat, the sweater, and what you don't see is the lovely fleece blanket on my lap here.
Oh my gosh.
Me too. I mean, I only live like an hour away from you, so yeah, it's very cold outside. We don't want to hear about the weather, Jordan, so you just be quiet there in
It was a
Arizona.
little nippy. It was a little nippy this morning. It was like 48 when I woke up.
Yeah,
That's
we haven't seen 48 in months, so
yeah, it's super cold, man. Back home, I think it was -37 Celsius yesterday. So
well, I mean,
yeah,
it's colder than that here. Like -10 is, I think, colder than that. I don't know.
I don't know. You're crazy.
Jackie,
Imperial.
yeah, I was gonna say, I only know American units, Jordan. We don't get into all the rest of that.
Yep.
Alright.
Now, so currently outside it is 3 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, wait, I have Celsius on my watch, -15 Celsius.
Oh, yeah,
Gee.
so
Even
Lot.
colder in Canada.
a lot colder. Yeah, I guess they do meet at negative, I think it's -40 is when they're the
Yeah,
same.
-40.
This
So
is why people tune into No Breakaways,
yeah,
by the way, for the hot metric imperial analysis.
yeah, this is it. This whole entire episode is metric imperial. So
Yeah, let's talk miles now. I mean,
Which
5,280 feet.
yeah,
Am I
if you
right?
want to get metric and want to earn more points, have all your stuff in metric,
oh yeah.
you level up 20% faster.
Yeah,
Yep.
I got everything in metric, and I just even switched my Strava to metric the other day, but I don't remember why. But I'd like it better. The numbers are bigger, so I feel like I rode longer. Although I didn't find a metric time conversion, so that sucked.
We're working on that in Canada.
Yeah. So so let's talk ZRL. We'll start off with some Premier League, and yeah, we'll have Jordan go first since he rode. Jackie, you are riding next week.
Yeah, so not tomorrow, but 8 days from now, I will be joining Sirius the Pros Closet for the fun stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we can talk about that later, but yeah, heck of a race to start in. Libby Hill finish, possibly the most lactate-inducing finish in PL history.
You
So
know, that race that hill holds a special place in my heart. It was not only the first race I won as part of USA Cycling Crit, but it was also featured in the 2020 version of the Joe Martin virtual cycling race.
Oh,
So again, holds a special place in my heart, no matter how painful it is, and I'm looking forward to it.
that's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, we can talk about the 2020 Joe Martin stage race all day if you'd like. I like that. I had a good time with that one. But moving on to last week's Premier League team time trial, and not a boring team time trial. This was pretty cool. The Mighty Metropolitan Loop, just 20 kilometers, but featuring quite a large elevation gain in the first half, like 350 meters or something, including the KOM, the NYC KOM, which is about a 2.5 minute blast for the men. I think we did, and but basically from the second kilometer of the race, you're just climbing a little bit of flat on that gosh darn glass road that's just unrelenting. And then you're already gassed by the time you hit kilometer 9 and you hit that KOM, which has a 15% grade in it, and a lot of points where it's 8% or more. So interesting approaches to that. I know for finesse, we had to really finesse our approach to that, because with different rider capabilities and just the pure watts per kilo differences between different riders, it's hard to get riders over that KOM, and then you have half the race left. So you can't drop everybody up there and just go hell for leather. You have to dose it out. And I guess PO Auto and Canyon did an excellent job of that on the men's side. They were within 2 seconds of each other at the finish. PO Auto winning again, and clawing back some points. They took a big hit in Yorkshire. They were leading the series, and then they only scored 8 points out of the possible 20 in Yorkshire, so they fell behind Canyon. And they managed to claw back one. They're a powerhouse in this team time trial. They know what they're doing. They do the weekly TTTs on Thursdays too, I think, and always dominate those. Like those guys know what they're doing. But yeah, racing the thing, I can tell you, it was a really tough one, and really one of the ones where on Discord, instead of having push to talk, we just had it open the whole time because we were just constantly back and forth. Are you getting dropped? Am I getting dropped? Like a little less, a little more, and that's what it took. And I'm sure those guys at the front were doing it. And then on the women's side, maybe a predictable conclusion at this point, Hino won, and it was very convincing. And now they've swept the series so far. So I think statistically they've wrapped up the series. Maybe they can't lose at this point. Maybe they just have to win one more.
Are you guys are going 8 weeks, right? Premier League's 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they've swept the first 5 and just dominating. 22 seconds is quite a lot on a course like that. And that was to second place in the 2024 women. And then it went down from there, a minute to the top 5. That's huge. So that team is dominating. And honestly, I had it in my notes, why is Hino so darn good?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's one thing to watch them ride away in, 1 week, but they've done it every single week. They're all so good. Maybe Jacquie has some insight, but I don't know why the other teams can't close that gap.
I will say, riding against Hino, I think one of their strengths as a team is they just have excellent team strategy, whether it is, putting forward that very perfect pace line on these difficult team time trials or on the scratch races, when they have this very cohesive strategy to go for those intermediate sprint points and really take advantage of the draft. That was something we definitely saw develop at the end of season 1. And I keep waiting for, another team with the depth of talent that Hino has to put together this really cohesive strategy to challenge them, because I think all of the women's teams recognize the point when Hino goes, it's time to go. They're making very smart in-race decisions. But I think there's also sort of a double edge to that. Everybody respects them so much, so they're able to dictate how the race goes, and they're able to race on their terms. And they're not really coming across any surprises that they're not prepared for.
Jacquie, I was really hoping you were going to say they were able to dictate the pace and they only have 1 week left. So Jacquie's on the scene.
And Jackie's
then it's done. The reign of Hino is over. But you wouldn't say that because that would be a not PR answer. But I can say it because I don't race against any of them. So, yeah, it is. It's shocking how dominant they've been. Every time I tune in, I'm not rooting against them because we're all just people. But it's because the level of the other women, it's not like they aren't good. These women are amazing racers. Everybody, they're so good. 2024. There's so many amazing teams that I am really shocked that they've been able to win every single week. It's one thing to win the series in a dominant fashion, but it's a different thing to never lose,
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I think Hino is doing, is they're really able to focus on these races, whereas, a lot of the other high-profile women, the women that we saw on Team USA, the women that we see doing well in these other series, they're focusing on other races, other series. And so this is not their single punch. So if we look at an excellent rider, Christy Tracy, very often she's coming to these races off of, 3-4 days of racing. And so she's coming with tired legs. And, even if you're the top end racer, there is just an element of exhaustion when you come to these scratch races, and it's that 1/10 of a second, it's that extra punch that costs you those points. And I think, Hino also prioritizing these races does give them that advantage.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that Hino is. Is this the only race they're racing all week, or?
I
think
don't know. Yeah, they're not on our GP.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, at that top level, like you said, I mean, 1% is all the difference in the world, you know. And
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
coming
especially
up.
when it comes to that like final sprint, like, can you just get that little pit to rocket at the finish line? Because you know, less so in the team time trials where we are talking about a gap of a minute. But I think
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
week
Well, and
when we look at points
that's
races,
evident.
it is.
It's evident too because they don't win every race. Like they don't win number one position in every race. They just get the absolute most out of all five riders every time. And so they get like second, sixth, eighth, ninth, tenth. And so, that's how you win these things and they stack it, So
So I'm gonna.
interesting. You almost root for them for the sweep now, but Jackie's in the race, so I
No,
got
we're always rooting Jackie number one.
yeah,
Number
Jackie
one.
number one.
We're not no slander here. Um,
No.
so I do have a question, and this may be a newbie question. You might just want to avoid it, but like maybe it's two things. Like number one is like why isn't all the focus on the ZRL? And number two, like how do you see it progressing on the men's and women's side? Like, do you see there being a like a Premier League that everybody focuses on?
Go ahead,
Well,
Jack.
I'll take focus for the Zwift Racing League, and this is entirely personal, but I think having the start time at 12 or 1 p.m. Central Standard Time on a Monday is very, very difficult for um, American women to make, in particularly. I think we're cutting out a lot of people who, that time is just not doable. I know it works better for the European streaming time. It works better to get a lot more viewers, but from my standpoint, I was not able to participate in the last 7 weeks because I was at work during that time. And I think, we're cutting out a lot of other very, very talented writers too. For example, Laura Matson-Coe is a full-time orthopedic surgeon, uh, lovely guest to this show, 7 at Worlds, but there's no way she's going to be able to make that 1 p.m. Central Standard Time start with her job. So I think that is going to be a point of fracture where we don't see, necessarily unity of all the top writers,
Yeah.
and why we might still be searching out other leagues where we can still compete, still have a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I almost heard like two things. It's because the people competing as Zwift are not professional riders, right? Because obviously, if you're a pro, like you race when they tell you to race. So that's interesting. But the other thing I heard, and I would almost like to see this, is like the Premier League broken out by region at a time that works for the region. Because I do
Yes.
think, like you said, it is. I mean, Hino is amazing. I'm taking nothing from Hino. They're amazing. But like, it would be really cool to see everybody competing with the very top people at a convenient time when you can race. Because we all know when you're trying to like shoehorn a race in your lunch, like it's not going to work that well. So it'd be cool if they almost like broke it out by region. And I was actually
Yeah.
thinking, like, I know for the bees, like we've talked about it. I mean, most of us are like, on probably all fronts, like we're people who have a lot of stuff going around. I mean, like we love riding, but it'd be awesome if they had ZRL on like a Saturday or like a B Premier League on a Saturday when I could hop in and like we'd race all the other top Bs and I'd get my butt dropped all the time. But, that's when all the Bs race. Like Saturday mornings, all the top American
Yeah.
B men race.
Yeah, I think that extends to the top level A riders too, though. Like you see, oh my crit on Saturday, all the big hitters come out and then some. I think I've thought about this a bit, and I think Swift has made some strategic errors with the Premier League. But the Monday thing is crap because you're allowing RGT to compete on the weekend when you could just crush that. You could just have Sunday races, and RGT would not compete. Everybody would do the Sunday PL. So there's that. Then there's the fact that it's not regional; it's everybody at once. I think your idea is great there. Smaller races are better to watch. The 6 versus 6s that you host on this channel are very good to watch. Whereas 150 riders on the men's side, it's a big blob most of the time, and it's cool because it's the fastest and the best. But it would be great to have a regional, and then you could go and advance to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
That way. Yeah, and I just think there's just problems with that Monday start and the competition there, and also you just saw that they released an April start for season 3 and a July start for season 4. Like, what are you doing? You can't have 6 Premier League runs a year.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody's going to want to watch it. Middle of the summer, you're diluting your product and you're making each season just rote and repetitive. So I don't know. I don't get it
It's
on that.
yeah, I mean it's a hard one. It's a hard one.
I think we need to keep in mind that, this is a growing sport and they're going to make strategic errors, but
Yeah.
the important thing is that we learn from these strategic errors and say, who are we excluding? What fan base are we missing? And actively try to correct them. But, I agree with you, if we go for, essentially back to back seasons without an off season, are we going to lose high profile riders to burnout? Are we going to lose them to hopefully outdoor riding when that becomes available? And what is that going to do to the sport if there's not this sense of an off season you can return to?
I mean,
A 1 month a 1 month break is worse than no break because you can't have a break,
yeah,
right?
you can't
If
do
you
any
take 3
structure.
weeks of that month off, you're going to be in crap shape for the season. So it's like, it needs to be 2 months, I think.
So, I
But
mean, the other thing I think that I think is sometimes I guess underthought about is how much us normal people like racing against the pros. So,
right.
like, I mean, I've taken, like, when I rode against Claudia Baring a couple years ago when she had the US jersey, and like in a race, I'm like, I took a screenshot, and I raced against Angela, is it Pritzer? I don't know how to say her last name. I took a screenshot of her national because it's cool to be racing against these people. Like when I race against pros, I mean, obviously I normally get beat. I mean, both of them beat me, but like, to be able to have a Premier League, let's say you had a Premier League that's really accessible, or a North American Premier League, like I'm gonna run into you people, um, which is really cool for us for so much of the league for it to be accessible. So, anyways, we've talked about this for a while. Yeah, so we got the Volcano course, and I know some of the viewers are already asking for predictions for this week. So let's talk a little bit about the course. What do you both think?
Okay. I mean, I guess I'm the one racing it. So this is going to be interesting, I think, because this is like 3 laps of a hard course. We haven't really seen that with like one defining feature of that length. Are people going to hold back and try to conserve and keep their sprinters in the game because it is a sprint at the end? Are they going to attack bottom to top? Is it just going to be chippy for the points in that last 150 meters where it's really steep? I think it'll be super interesting. If I had to predict, it'll be a fit sprinter that can make it over. Like on the men's side, you'd be crazy not to pick Freddie Ovet. Like, okay, he can do everything. So obviously, but I would love to see a real sprinter like Joel Carroll of the Finesse Rockets make it over because the Volcano KOM is very draftable.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can either do 7 watts a kilo up that, or you can do 5.5 on the men's side and still get over in the same time if you're smart. So I think it'll be great viewing.
I think that is 100% on the money. Volcano KOM, on your own, it's brutal. I did it this morning. It's that perfect, like 5 to 7 minutes, VO2 max, like just everything burning. But it's, as you said, eminently draftable. And I think particularly in a race this long, going the 40K, the race is going to belong to the person that can smartly draft up the KOM and then just punch it through that last 10% grade, that last 100 meters. I don't think it's necessarily going to belong to a sprinter. On the women's side, I think we have enough women that can just grind out high watts that will be dropping the true 10 and 15-second powers. But I really think it's going to go to the person who smartly drafts for 9/10 of the hill and then just punches it over in that last 100 meters. Like that is where the victory will be. That's where the intermediate points are going to be. Um, and ultimately, coming off talking about Hino, I think this is a fantastic place for some smart team strategy where the team gets together and says, we have two riders whose job is not to get over the hill first, but to drag up our puncher who's going to come up in that last 100 meters, pick them up on the flat, help them downhill, relax, recover, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the other underestimated part of this course is that you can make up a ton of time on this downhill, a ton of time. I know Monali, when she was coaching Katie made up 18 seconds. There were two lone riders, but Katie made up 18 seconds without putting out higher wattage just because of smart descending. So, like, it is draftable uphill, and I love that because for those of us who have a little bit of more meat on our bones, that's the kind of climb I want. Either I want it a minute or a minute and a half, or I want it like 4%. But like on the way down, because it is draftable on the way up, it's not necessarily like, oh, just super tuck and sit there for 5 minutes. It's places where you can smartly apply power and make up 2-3 seconds. When it levels out, you can make up 2 or 3 seconds to somebody who super tucks too long and isn't paying attention. So
yeah,
it's gonna
and you can drop people who aren't paying attention too.
Yeah,
that's really fun if you know where that flat breakaway is and you're waiting. You can put in a good 708 watts, gap them, go right back into your super tuck, and now they're struggling to make up that time. So you're absolutely right. This is a technical downhill, even if it is physiologically a rest. You have to keep your head in the game while you're recovering your legs.
yeah. So last week on the Mighty Metropolitan, I told my team on Monday that I busted my leg. I broke it, but the doctor said I'd be fine by Wednesday, so I just had to miss Tuesday. So that was good planning on my part. I didn't really do that. I just told them I didn't want to do it, and they had better people anyways. But this week, I'm really looking forward to see what the race is going to be like. Because for the lower levels, very rarely isn't there someone on the front really pushing, and I could see, at the community levels, this could be a race where like a small group splits, especially on that first lap, the climber people, and they really go for that fastest through segment and first across the line on that first time. And then the larger pack with me in it, hopefully, we catch them on the downhill. And then the next 2 times up are pretty easy with just that short punch over the top. But, it is interesting to see, like, are they going to try to burn the sprinters off? And I mean, I think you're right on, Jordan. The people that are fit all around and have a pretty good sprint. I mean, I know on like the women's side, it's probably just going to be the normal people because they all seem like that archetype. The Catherine Curies and all the Hino women. Yeah, I mean, she's just been killing, right? So,
I mean, she's got that really fun combination of like just the long-term diesel power, the smart racing, and then the punch across the line. Like it's a triple threat that just gets her points again and again and again, and is fantastic to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm somebody like on the men's side, like if I'm Vujason, right, I'm gonna want Canyon to do everything they can to drop the Joel Carrolls or the Holdens or Pio Auto will be really good. They have a lot of those like really high power guys who also have a very good sprint.
Yeah,
I know they have Peterson and Lissam, I think is his name.
Bulldogger.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you think it's going to take to drop the sprinters then?
So
I mean, that's a real question.
So here's what I raced this with Johnny Rocket one time, and he's like one of the best Zwifters on the platform in terms of just pure racecraft. And what he did is, so it was a combined cat race, and what he did to split the group up is he's the best drafter I know, but he's not the strongest rider I know. So what he did on this climb to get away from the pack is he went super hard at the start, and then all the climbers went with him, and then he drafted them the entire rest of the way up. So he basically forced a break because the climbers wanted a break.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the Premier League, it's going to take a guy like Jordan basically TTing up the thing, but with a really strong burst to get off the front. And I
Yeah.
think to break away, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to outride you like on Innsbruck on the Innsbruck climb. It's like it's going to be a strategic way to do it. So go really hard, like 8-9 watts per kilo at the bottom. You get a little group of 5 or 10, and then you got to go up at 6.5.
Yeah. That's always my methodology if you're trying to drop a sprinter is put it on early on one of those climbs because you can't give it if you're in the second half of that climb after the flat spot, you're too close to the top and they can sniff it. They know they can get there, right? It's a couple minutes they can hang in, so you got to force it. That second ramp, you go over the first 30 seconds downhill and then it's like a solid minute and a half at 5%. Before you hit the next roller, I think that's where you put the pressure on if you want to hurt the legs behind you. It's risky though because then you have to manage to hold on for another 4 minutes or whatever. But
Well, it's
yeah,
all
it'll
a
be
game of I can suffer more than you. Like I'm not a sprinter. I'm good for 5 minutes. Like you're good for what, a minute?
Well,
yeah,
and
exactly.
I think that's the interesting psychological thing is you have to convince people if they go with you, they're gonna not be able to suffer that much. But you don't necessarily have to suffer horribly the whole way up. You just have to make them think that they can't do it at the bottom. And so that's sort of like, I mean, because I know what I can do up that climb, right? I can climb it in like 7 minutes, 6:45. But if somebody is hammering at, say, 6.5 watts per kilo in my B race at the start, I'm going to be like, hard pass on this. I'll drop back to the second group. But then they don't have to ride 6.5 the whole way up because I already wimped out. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting. I'm super excited for it. Are you racing, Jordan?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited to watch you suffer up it. I'll text you during it.
Okay, cool.
And
I'll respond.
And next week when Jackie's racing, I can text both of you guys. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, right up the hill. Just be like, you're going too slow. Want more watts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like when I was a runner and you'd run by and people were like, pick it up, go faster. And I was like, no, I'm going to keep going this pace.
You're almost there.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about swimming is that my head was underwater, so I couldn't hear any of it.
Yeah.
If I turned my head and like I accidentally heard it, I could just turn my head and be like, nope, we're done.
Except when you were doing the 500 and they went like this with the board. Then.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Every time. 15 laps in a row, they're doing the thing where you're going too slow. Yeah. I'm going as fast as I can, I promise.
The first time I ever swam the 500, I like painstakingly explained to my dad, like, okay, we have this whole plan. Like, I'm like 8. But, I'm like, this means I'm doing really well. This means I'm going too fast. And this means, I'm doing terrible. So he thinks he's so clever and, he does this the whole way. And I come in a minute and a half under the pace I was supposed to go. And I was so angry. I was just like, Dad. He's like, what? You succeeded. Like, clearly it could have gone even faster. And it was like, no.
Hey. He's going to watch us and be happy. Does he have the number board mounted on his wall somewhere? Your time written on it?
No, not the time, but he did start Zwift as part of his New Year's resolution. So I keep texting him my FTP because that was when we got started. The goal was to see who had the higher FTP and who was going to hit 300 first.
Oh, so your dad is like for real or gigantic, one of the two,
or losing really badly to his daughter. Yeah,
maybe all three.
Always in the hills, but he is a sprinter. Like,
man,
he's just got the power that I can't put out for 15 seconds. He trained for football. Like he used to squat like 450 pounds. Like I'm never gonna have that.
Yeah, I want to go find my dad and tell him, like, ask him why he didn't do more sprints and train for football because none of that rolled down the genetic tree to me. So
you could be a sprinter.
Some more wind sprints. Come on.
All right, well, let's get into the races of the week. We'll go with Jordan first. Is there anything you want to do to set it up?
Sure. We were at the 3R Classique race in London. This is a flat one. On the surface, not super interesting, but I love these races where the A's, B's, and C's all start together and it's a survival race. And so that's exactly what we had here. And the rider of the week was the last survivor in a stacked field here. You'll see when we roll the video. Yeah, first clip, we can see I wasn't following Allie Clark yet, who is the rider of the week. I'm following another B who is hanging in. And he's back here with Holden Como. I don't know if you know that name. He's just chilling back here. But you can see this is where Holden rides because it's easy at the back. He's chilling, and so these bees are learning from the best and doing the right things. And then I followed this guy, M. Whites, through a lot of the race. And he was just getting over this little climb on the course every time. But he would get to last wheel and then he would kick. You can see him kicking right now just to stay on. See, he's just on the back there. And he did it like 4 laps out of 5 or whatever. He eventually lost touch with 2 laps to go. But the guy was just dangling, but he knew exactly how far he could push it. And here we go to the actual rider of the week, Allie Clark, who is a powerhouse. You can see his power is huge. He weighs 94 kilos. And this is the last climb of the race. So he decides, I'm not going to be at the back here. I'm going to get to the front with a big burst on the flat. And he gets up there. And then he's just holding on because guys like Como and some of the top Zwift racers are hammering up this climb. This was like an all hitters affair, and he's moving backwards. I mean, he's 94 kilos against these A riders. It's hard up the climb, but he makes it over in the tail of the snake there. There you go. He lets himself slip to the back, and now you can see he caught his breath through that little hairpin, and then with a K to go, he started ramping it up and putting himself near the front. He was already the last B here, so he already won his race, but he didn't want to just hang on. He wanted to get the most out of it he could. And you can see this power, like 520 watts, with still like 800 meters to go. And he's just moving up through this pack. I don't think he's ever going to get the 16 watts a kilo that Holden did in the end, but he ends up beating some really good guys. I think he came 16th overall. And if you watch right across the line, I kept the clip because he beat an AG2R World Tour rider across the line if you look behind him on the last shot. So the guy just had a killer race. Yeah, right there. You can see the rider directly behind him in the brown kit is AG2R. So Tour de France rider, and the B rider beat him, and he averaged 4.1, so he's a real B. And if you can see in his profile picture there on Zwift Power, he's a rower. So all of a sudden the big power makes sense. The guy's a heavyweight rower. And he's got 25 races on Zwift and some huge power. Like he normalized 400 watts for that 35-minute race, which is almost just a bit more than 4 watts a kilo, but still tons of power. Allie Clark, rider of the week, really impressive performance. Holden Como, watch out. This guy's coming for you.
Yeah, those rowers just winning worlds and all sorts of stuff. I need to start rowing.
I saw that quadruple digit power right at the end. Like anytime I see that 1,000+ power shoot up, I'm like, hot damn, at the end of a race, like that's just very, very impressive.
He was like 500 watt average for the last 4 minutes. So yeah, he crushed it. So there you go. He's the rider of the week, and I think he earned that one. I didn't know him tuning into that race, but man, as it developed, well, what a ride.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, next up, so we don't have a race of the week from Jackie. We do have a racer of the week. Do you want to do the racer of the week first, or what we're going to break down?
Week.
Okay.
So this one was actually nominated. Rob Dallimore was nominated by Morgan Aldrich, and he was nominated.
We're doing Glenn Winkle.
Glenn Winkle.
Yeah.
The wrong one. Looking at next.
Kudos to Rob too.
Yeah, Rob, you'll get your time, Rob.
Yeah, but Glenn Winkle is one of the race coordinators for the BRAC Zwift Race League, and he was nominated by Anna Petrovna for organizing the league. You know, really coordinating to help the ANSI local riders that were just itching to get out there. And in addition to being a race organizer himself, he's also a racer. He's active on Zwift, and, you know, looking at his numbers there, very, very impressive. He's also the oldest rider of the week we've had at 66. So, in addition to just activating the community, getting lots of people involved, getting people motivated, you know, age is not an excuse. I don't want anybody out there, I don't want anybody listening to this show be like, well, this is for younger people. Glenn's doing a great job of showing that age is just a number and you can kick ass anyway.
I love it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Congrats to Glenn. Thanks for organizing. I know Zwift, appreciates it, and all the people appreciate it. To all the organizers out there, the ZRL and everything else, we appreciate all the work you all are putting in. So yeah. So what are we going to watch next, Jackie?
Yeah. So because we're highlighting Glenn for more of his community involvement rather than a specific race, we actually pulled some of my own footage from the Three Sisters test, which I did this morning, and really wanted to go into it because the forward KOM is such a common feature we see in a lot of Zwift races. We saw it at Worlds. We see it in, every single time we have a race that goes up the Three Sisters, that we just wanted to talk about some of the strategy that goes into it, and what to expect, if you do see it in your own race, what sort of powers you want to think, what you're sort of going through your head as you're going through this 90-second to 2-minute course, and where you might want to focus your powers.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
So we actually start this clip a little before I hit the segment proper, just because those of you who have done this course before know that the power will actually start to ramp up as soon as you hit the hill. So, we're still 20 seconds out from the start of the segment proper, but this is typically the time you'll start to see racers getting excited, getting ready to hit that first incline. And the incline starts just here at the bridge, and it starts very, very suddenly. You go from almost no incline right into 8%. And in this race, because you hit the incline so suddenly, you have to be ready to ramp into high power immediately. Here I'm standing, I'm averaging over 500 watts, and I have a pretty good idea that this is going to be about a 100-second effort for me. So just titrating that in for the first 30 seconds of this hill, which is going to be the steepest part, until we hit that nice little flat spot, about 35 seconds in. And we're going to go from a grade of 7% here very, very shortly into almost flat. And the nice thing about this flat part is it splits the course almost into two. And the other nice thing is that it gives you a chance to readjust your cadence, readjust your gear. Here we are right in the flat. Or catch that break, smush that gap, and catch on to the draft of another rider right before you head back into 7%. So here we're on the back half of the course now. You can see my watts have dropped a little bit. I did have a divot in pace when we hit that flat spot, but really trying to even pace this because, we're still on a grade of 7%. The course has not flattened out yet, and we can't let up. So now we're about 20 seconds from the finish, 200 meters to go. This is when the course really flattens out. This is when you want to drop that aero boost, as you can see I did here. This is the final sprint into the finish, got 100 meters to go. This is when you're going to want to start thinking about positioning, less about what do I have to pace just to make this up. So this today was, just over 100-second effort for me. The presence of a draft, the presence of different power-ups can certainly change it. But the biggest thing you really want to take away from this segment is knowing what sort of powers you can sustain for the time that it's going to take you to do it. And, that 90-second to 2-minute window is very, very interesting physiologically, because that's when the body begins to transition between energy systems, where you start to go from that sprint, I can do anything for a minute, to VO2 max. And for different people, it happens at different places. And obviously the faster you're able to go, the more you can rely on that sprint power and the faster you're able to go. So I when I'm training for these things, I like to keep 2 minutes as just sort of a mental benchmark. Like if it's below 2 minutes, I'm going to give everything I have. I'm really going to treat it by like a sprint. If it's above 2 minutes, I'm going to start thinking more about that VO2 pacing. What do I need to do to breathe? How do I go in so I don't burn out and just, finish at a 50-watt crawl because I've got nothing left?
Yeah, and so I mean, to be clear, you were fifth at Worlds with it ending up this climb. So I
Yes.
mean, you know
Yeah.
what you're doing. I mean, I saw your 132 PR up there. So this is like no joke. So I have some questions now.
Okay.
In that flat section, I saw there on your Three Sisters test, you kept the power. I mean, you said it dipped a little, which it's going to happen a lot of times on the flat because your resistance changes too. But are you consciously trying to dip your power in the middle of that climb?
Yes, actually. And that's something I really like to do when I know that I am going for a time. Because if you go and you look at real life races, this is something that's actually really well characterized on the Bologna TT, for example. Where you put your power on a course makes a very big difference in your time. So if I was to go, you know, a straight average power, let's say 450 watts up the whole climb,
Mhm.
my time would be slower if I went 450 watts on everything rather than 500 watts on the steepest half of the climb and 400 watts on the less steep half of the climb. So it's absolutely in your best interest to put the most watts out where it's steepest because you're going to get the least amount of draft penalty.
Hmm.
And also because that's your chance to make the breakaway, like we saw at Worlds, where Moomin Pasio made her move early on, found the steepest segment of the climb, and just dropped the rest of the pack.
Yeah.
You know,
And then you mentioned where to drop the arrow, which was awesome. If you have a feather, where do you drop it?
you drop a feather, you drop it early before that first flat. So
Yeah.
again, Moomin Pasio was a masterclass when she won Worlds. You drop it at that 10% grade early on because this is your chance to break the pack. This is not a sprinter's finish. This is one of those rare courses where it's going to, if you finish at the top of this hill, it's a 90-second finish. There is no final 10 seconds. There is no final 100-yard sprint. It's going to be who can put the best 90-second effort in.
Up to 2 minutes, up to 2:30.
Up
Because
to 2
we're
minutes.
I'm gonna bring us back to us
That's
normies. But yeah,
interesting. That's an interesting part of it with power up selection because at Worlds, everybody on Canada, we were like, yeah, we want the arrow for that and, hit it in the last 20 seconds.
Yep.
But in a lower category, if you're going 70% of the speed, you probably want the feather because the draft isn't there at those speeds. You're going 24K an hour instead of 33 at the steepest. And so you probably want to take a feather and use that as your finishing move
you
because
still
you
want
just
the
don't have.
arrow. You still
You
want the
still
arrow.
want the arrow, even if you're going, I don't know, Rick, I'll take you on that. I
Well,
know
you
but
if you
I
can
think in the seas,
if
you want a feather.
yeah, I
I
tell
do.
you what,
I
me
want
and
a
you.
feather. 71 kilos, I want a feather.
Yeah.
So I'm 73, maybe 74. We're gonna find out here on Tuesday. Um, Me and you will ride up the hilly KOM together at a normal speed,
Yeah.
and I'll take an arrow, and you can take a feather, and we'll sprint it out, and we'll see who
Okay.
wins.
We'll go up at no, we'll just go up at 4 watts a kilo.
That's
And I'll
fine.
use yeah, okay, and I'll use the feather and you use the arrow and
Yeah.
we'll keep 4 watts a kilo and see who wins.
Oh, I thought we were gonna do like a sprint and film it.
Well, but then I'm gonna lose, so I don't like it.
That's why I
That's a
think this
bad
is the one
experiment.
spot. The one spot. That's why I tried to say we had to go up easy. Because if
Yeah.
we have to
No,
go
I
up hard,
don't
I would be 40 seconds behind or something.
yeah. But it is certainly an interesting climb because at the A speeds, it's like a real drafting climb.
Yeah.
Especially on the men's, you saw like the pack was actually still together, like 40 guys for the first 30 or 40 seconds. And then the winner finally made his move because we were still going 44K an hour up the first part. So Yeah, it changes depending on the pace, but Jackie's got it down. The only thing I'd add is our DS Brett Boniface for Canada said that there's 2 points on that climb. One, if you want to attack, is on that dip in the corner. If you want to attack the climb, that's where you go, and that's where the winner did go. And if you want to sprint the climb, you go on that last dip. And so if you're holding something back and you're like a Holden Como, that's where you unleash it.
Okay.
And so attack at the 1 point, and it's the changes of gradient that allow you to make the big delta with the pack. So
Yeah.
that's what he said, and I think it ended up playing out that way, at least on the men's side.
So what if you have a draft fan? Where do you deploy it?
What if I have a draft fan? Oh,
Yeah.
well, they didn't have draft fans at Worlds.
Well, I know I'm not I mean, I hate to break it to you two, but most of
Yeah,
us
you're
don't
in
go
the
to Worlds.
minority.
Most
This
of
might
us
be the only
most of us
room
are
you're in the
riding
minority.
Saturday morning before our kids get up and we have to make them pancakes.
Get rid of the
Well,
draft
I would
fan.
say
Get
that-
another power up. That's a
Yeah.
terrible power
But
up.
what if you have the draft fan? Is it
What
I
if
mean-
you have the breakaway burrito?
well, if it did so to me, if the course doesn't end at the top, I put
Yeah.
the draft van on as I'm going over the finish so that I can go easier at the top and recover.
100%.
But if you
100%.
have it, let's say you have it and you can't, I mean, no point in throwing it away. Do you use it before the climb to try to or like to rocket
I'm gonna hit
into it?
I'm going to hit it at the corner and try to stay on the wheels as best I can, and then do that late dig if I'm in it, because you're going
Yeah.
to carry some speed out of the corner, and the draft will be relevant, I think. Yeah, or you could use it right at the beginning. I think whatever, it's going to save you some power.
Yeah, personally, I would probably use it right after the flat,
Yeah.
just because the speed's going to be picking up. Personally, I know that is when I will have just closed the gap, with whatever riders in front of me. And that'll give me enough of a break that I can get into that last 300 meters, 200 meters, with whatever I have left to try and outsprint them. Because, I'm not going to win on a 7% grade. I'm going to win once it flat.
I'm only going to come fifth in the world on a
Yeah, I
7.
know. It's I mean, I would have settled for top 5 personally, but
I settled for top 32, so.
But you made that break beforehand. You're selling yourself short. I
was never gonna win up that climb either. So it was.
I just watched the Cycling Canada videos they put out, and they had these real fancy pictures of Matteo, and they have these real fancy pictures of Lionel Sanders. But you got a whole bunch of airtime in this video. Why aren't there a bunch of fancy pictures of Jordan Shane on his trainer?
Yeah, it's because Lionel Sanders, because he's a triathlete pro, he has a camera crew that often films him for his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And so he had that in place, and they just came on that day. And the other guy, Matteo, lives in Ottawa, which is right next to Cycling Canada. So I'm guessing they sent some people to his house too, because that was pro quality footage.
Yeah. So I got to be honest, I did not expect a real answer for that, Jordan. I was just giving you a hard time.
They sort of set it up like, who can give us good footage for this video we're doing, and I'm like, definitely not me, guys. So Rick knows I can't give him good footage. So.
Well, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
So we got another question. Sammy is wondering, feather or arrow on the Volcano finish tomorrow? I'm 100% arrow. Million percent arrow.
Yeah. It's a sprint. You got to use your arrow.
Yeah, because it's flat. It's not. I mean, we don't finish on the hill.
It's a little grind because you come up and then it flattens and then it's a little grind, right? But you're still going to be going 50 k an hour. Yeah. So arrow
Jackie,
for sure.
do you agree, Jackie? We can get an argument.
I love arguments. I think it
No, you
depends
don't.
entirely on the writer.
Yeah.
I think, again, it depends entirely on the writer. Like, there are just some writers for whom, the arrow is always going to be better because they're 6'7" and weigh 60 kilos. And so it's like they have this huge draft profile that the arrow is just going to give them more benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And the same way, like the feather power up, if you are one of those heavier, 90 kilo riders, but, maybe you're 5'4" and you don't have this big, arrow penalty, you're still going to get a big benefit from the feather because you'll able to pedal up to speed and you're going to accelerate into the sprint faster. So yeah, I think definitely the generalization of like we want to prioritize the arrow is best. But I always want to put in the caveat like, know yourself as a racer, know where you are penalized most for speed. Is it your watts per kilo? Is it, your draft profile? And I think there's room for everybody to kind of personalize it a little bit.
So and this is no joke. I know we have Feather, Arrow, and Ghost tomorrow or on Tuesday. I want a Ghost. I want a Ghost. I want to go up that climb or like halfway through the climb in a group of like 15, and I want to be on the back doing my normal thing where I'm incredibly lazy, and I want to hit the Ghost and sprint all out as hard as I can and see if I can put like 5 or 6 seconds on the field and make them have to jump and try to chase me down, because I typically I'm a decent sprinter, but like a little bit uphill sprint is not my thing. But I want to see. I think it'd be fun to have the Ghost and at least try.
You want to troll. You just want to troll. That's your goal for the
Are
race.
so nasty for those intermediate sprints. They're so beautiful when they happen.
Yeah.
Because like nobody's expecting you to launch 10 seconds early. But if you do, and then you have that gap, there's not enough time to make up for it. They get the points.
Yeah.
And I think with this particular race, we could also see Ghost be very, very nasty on the downhill as people force breaks for those sections where you have to come out of the super tuck, and we might be able to break up the field a little bit. So I want to see the Ghost just from a chaos side.
I wish they would do one. And so, so on the Hilly KOM, where do you use the steamroller? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So I want to do races where they have like Ghost and they have the burrito, and then they have like some like, and not the anvil, maybe just like Ghost and burrito, and those are the only two, because those have an effect on the race, but it's more like a strategic effect than a I just go faster effect. So
Yeah.
I would like to see more races where it's like the power-ups are strategic instead of like, to win this race, you need an arrow, right?
Yeah.
Like we know on London Flat, if you don't have an arrow, you're not going to win the race. Period. I mean, I don't care if you're Holden or anybody else. Like whoever has the arrow is going to. But it'd be cool if like I saw a race that I think it was a Datter Day race, and it was actually one that I filmed for a thing where Holden had a Ghost at the end, and my buddy Dave also had a Ghost at the end, and Holden took off with the Ghost and no one noticed. And by the time he came out, he had like a 5-10 second lead, and he's going at 10 watts per kilo. And then Dave also had a Ghost. He popped up like 5 seconds in front of the field, and the field was just shocked, and like no one knew what was going on. So it's like it was much more strategic, which I think is cool.
I'll tell you my ultimate strategic move with the breakaway burrito is it was like a community race, and I was with my teammate Lucas on Elevate, who's a very good sprinter. And I said, I'll lead you out, buddy. I'm going to go to the front and do 10 watts a kilo from about 600 meters out, take you to 200 or whatever. And so I take him to 200, I pull off, and then I hit the breakaway burrito. The guys behind me can't draft me, and he's got a gap. I mean, come on. That was galaxy brain stuff right there.
Is this the Lucas who recently crashed? Same guy?
Yeah, that's Lucas who recently crashed.
Yeah, I hope you're feeling better, man. I saw on Instagram that he looks like he's getting recovered, but
all he did in his recovery rehab time is win Zwift races sitting down because he can't use his wrist. So, yeah.
And BD.
Yeah.
Sammy also wonders, was double draft on for Worlds?
Oh, people said it was. I don't know. I think we talked about this last time, didn't we, Jackie? Like, it's like I'm too into the race to notice that stuff.
Yeah, like at the point I'm in the race, like I'm paying attention to the 10 riders on my screen. I'm paying attention to my own metrics. Like I'm doing my best to attend to the draft, but really there's too many other, heads up displays that I'm trying to process.
There was some easy moments in that race where perhaps it was easier than you would expect, but it's also just a different dynamic with a bunch of World Tour riders there. I think I normalized 5.3 watts a kilo, so it wasn't that good of a draft. So
yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, so I mean, so for our one big thing this week, I know I'm surprising you guys with this. Jackie, you put out one. You had a thought that we should talk about caffeine, and at
Yep.
first I was like, "Oh, what's the big deal about it?" But then I got thinking about it more, and Jackie already looks like she's hyped up for it. So I wanted to talk about when you guys, I won't say use, but like ingest caffeine. Like, how are you planning it? Why? Like, how does it? If you have a race at night, what do you do? Just some of that stuff. So maybe Jackie, why don't you kick us off, since I know this is near and dear to your heart.
So I will preface this by saying caffeine is far and away one of my very favorite things.
So
But
I'm going to cut you off for just a sec. We should also preface this. I can't say we're not doctors because Jackie is a doctor, but nothing in this should be taken as medical advice or anything like that. We're just people talking about what we do.
PhD doctor right now, the actual medical doctor is still a couple months away. So full disclosure.
I'm like a doctor, like Dr. Dre's a doctor at best, you know. So
Doctor, I thought you were going to say Dr. Seuss. I mean,
oh yeah, him too.
yeah.
Same deal.
Okay, sorry, Jackie. I just wanted to make sure we got our disclaimer in there.
No, good disclaimer. So I love caffeine. And, there actually is excellent data showing that it is a performance enhancing drug. And I think people who have their caffeine addiction will acknowledge, I feel more energized. And there's very good data that shows that if you have a moderate amount of caffeine on board, it actually reduces the relative perceived exertion of a given effort. So if I was to go out and do 5 minutes at whatever watts, let's say 5 watts per kilo, it would feel easier if I had a cup of coffee before than if I didn't. The other nice thing about coffee is that it actually influences the point at which our bodies switch from metabolizing glycogen as fuel to using fat as fuel. So, again, if you're planning on doing a very, very long ride, having a cup of coffee beforehand or having caffeine in one of your drinks will help you make that transition more smoothly and maybe feel like you're hitting the wall a little bit less because you're able to bridge your two energy sources better.
Hmm.
Now, all of these effects actually get potentiated if you use caffeine every day. You're not able to observe the difference because your body just accepts caffeine as part of its baseline. So, as much as I love caffeine, I actually, when I think about using it to enhance my performance, I only use it on race days. I'm only pulling out the coffee when I'm ready to pull out an extra performance. So for me, that means coffee on weekends. That every time I'm getting up to do a race series in the morning, every time I'm getting up to do, a Three Sisters attempt or something like that, that's when I reward myself with coffee. During the week, I really try to, get my body back to that base state where it's not expecting the boost from caffeine. And then again at night, where I'm able to just sleep, get the full 8 hours without being that extra, level of alert and ready to go.
I think Rick and I are shocked and appalled that you don't drink coffee every morning. Are we not?
I do drink coffee, but it's decaf.
Yeah,
So
no.
I'll say one of the things where everyone gives me a hard time about. I've never tried coffee ever.
Oh, you're geez.
I've never even tried it. It's never even touched my lips, like old school.
I will say what I made it through all of college without coffee. It was my med school year, and my now fiance was the first person to make it for me. I did not like anything remotely coffee flavored, and he gives me this cup of black coffee, which he has made, and he's so proud of himself because he thinks he's playing like perfect host, and I'm like, why? Why do I have to drink this? Now, of course, I've since forgiven him. I've developed my own love of coffee, but I just remember that moment in perfect clarity of being like, I can't insult him. I can't insult him. Like, I have to drink. Oh God. Like, no sugar, no cream, just black coffee.
Well, I will buck the trend here, and I started drinking coffee in sixth grade. I didn't. We had to do these standardized tests, and I did not like them. I found them very boring, so I started drinking coffee before them during that week, and I finished the entire booklet on the first day, and then doodled for the rest because I was so wound up. No, but yeah, I'm a regular coffee drinker, but one cup a day, not like six. And then Jackie's right. You save the caffeine for the days you want to perform. I Some people use caffeine gels like, four times a week, like in intervals and races. I don't think that's a great idea. It kind of loses its effect. It's hard on your system. Like Rick said, if you're doing it after work, caffeine stays in your system a long time. So it's going to disrupt your sleep. But if you do need it, for Zwift racing, caffeine is so so. Like I'll have it. I actually like a Monster Hydro sponsor. But it has the extra stuff in it, the guarana and the taurine, and that seems to really like add something to it. But really, I only take caffeine at long races and long rides, like in the last hour of a 5 hour, 4 hour race when you're kind of dropping in energy and potentially running out of glycogen, as Jackie said as well. It can help with that, and it kind of just brings your alertness up. Uh, but it's not a save all. I think you can certainly do too much of it before an event. Like in crits in real life, guys really hammer the caffeine, and I'm like, there's already so much adrenaline with an event like that, and with the Zwift race too, that I think is too much of a good thing, and you start to get overstimulated and defeat your performance. So, poisons in the dose with it. It can help though, and I'll never say no to a cup of coffee in the morning either.
Yeah, I do drink black tea, and I have caffeine gels and stuff. So I'm not a no caffeine person, but I haven't personally felt like it's made any difference. Like I don't really notice like a change in RPE if I have caffeine and don't for a given wattage. And it may just be that I'm not. I mean, you both are very highly trained, and I'm not as much. So it's like I get in better shape, and it's like of course it's going to feel easier to do the same wattage if you're in a little bit better shape. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I know a lot of people are like into it, and
I bet though, if you did a 3 hour race, like for whatever reason, if you wanted to hurt yourself really badly, and if you took caffeine in the last 30 minutes, you would notice things got a lot more happy,
but
whether it was performance or not.
you think if I just took straight caffeine, because I mean I do eat and drink a lot, I try to ingest a lot of calories even in Zwift racing, just because I'm like I just feel like better when I
Oh, yeah.
am ingesting
Yeah.
calories.
Yeah, I think
Yeah. I think,
there are enough ways to get moderate amounts of caffeine in it. I during a race I will use caffeine with my noon hydration. That's the easiest way to get for me because I can't have like my big tumbler of black coffee in the middle of the race. Like that's going to cause me to overheat. But yeah, when I was doing half irons, like I would plan on having my coffee or my caffeine at 3 hours and then 4 hours, just sort of that point where I knew I was going to be feeling low. And if nothing else, I could tell myself, okay, you have caffeine on board, wait 10 minutes, you'll feel better.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're coming to the end. We don't have any questions. I do have one question for each of you. When is your next planned in real life race? Do you have one?
Jackie.
I do not. I have a bunch of other in real life events coming up. So I have a wedding coming up in April. I
Ooh.
have a graduation coming up in May. So those are kind of going to be my in real life races that I'm focusing on for the time being. And then, after that, we'll see where life takes me, and hopefully more comes this summer.
Yeah. Jordan?
Well, this was a good week for in real life racing in the professional peloton because we actually got some firm dates, and they're not when I wanted them to be per se. But Tulsa Tough is in June, which is a crit series, biggest crit series in America. Really cool. If anybody ever wants to watch a bike race, spectate Tulsa Tough, awesome. I think it's June 16th or something this time. And then we also got Joe Martin, the real one, not one of these many virtual versions that we're having over and over again, is going to be the end of August. And then I think our team is supposed to do tour Taiwan in September. So there are some firm dates, and I guess, people are investing money into making those dates happen now. So there's reasonable expectation that it should be okay to do. Who knows? But that's nice to see.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Congrats on having some races on your calendar.
Yeah. Just have to hold form for a short 7 months,
Yeah. Easy peasy.
Just
Yeah.
keep it going.
Jacquie, congrats on everything. I mean, you got some big stuff happening here in the next 3 months. So
Yeah.
Thank
super
you.
cool. All right. Well, everybody, Jordan, Jacquie, thanks for joining me again this week. And thanks to all